You have.
Okay.
He's not feeling well.
It's not a bad
probably
idea.
a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
Okay,
Oh, we're
now
live.
we're live.
Okay,
This
good morning.
is Senate Transportation Committee. It's Tuesday, January 16th. We're going to do some bill walkthroughs of other senators' bills that are in the Transportation Committee. And first, look from Chittenden Central.
That's correct. Well done.
Welcome. Tell us about your bill.
Thank you so much for having me, Senate Transportation. It's great to be here. This is Bill S-184, and just to give you a little bit of background, I currently live in Burlington, where I've been for going on, 30 years. I grew up in South Burlington, as Senator Chittenden knows, and both Burlington and South Burlington are fairly, or at least have areas that are fairly densely settled with lots of houses, children, pets, you name it, running around at all hours. And also both, I would say, South Burlington and much of Chittenden County is becoming an area where folks are relying on various modes of transportation, be it bicycles, e-bikes, more and more, scooters, e-scooters, you name it. And we have bike lanes and we have bike paths. The bike path in Burlington is a great way to get around. It's not lit at night, so I know when my daughter was working down on the waterfront, I encouraged her to, because she is a bike commuter, I would encourage her to ride on North Avenue as opposed to the bike path at night because it is so dark. So my point is just that you have a lot of folks on our big busy roads, and because we have 6 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, a downtown high school now, you've got kids walking and biking to school on a very, very regular basis. And that's part of the beauty of these neighborhood schools, is that you can get to school without having to be dropped off or without driving. But it was definitely brought to my attention, I mean, just by my own observation, but also by several of my constituents, that they were really becoming scared and worried about speeding, red light violations, among other things. And they didn't necessarily come to me with a solution, but it's something that I've thought about because I've lived in other states and other countries that use speed cameras and red light cameras, and they seem to be very effective. So when I did a little research into this, what became clear, and I talked to Ledge Council, which was super helpful, is that you could potentially grant to municipalities the option or the ability to use these cameras, and not necessarily make it, a mandate across the state, but allow certain areas, communities, and municipalities to opt into this kind of enforcement. Now, one of the things I would say is exacerbating the situation for us in Burlington is that we have a police force that is relatively diminished at this time, as you probably know. And last week I heard that we are, I think, 75 state troopers down this year. I would want to check that, but that's what I was told by another senator. So there's less enforcement out and about to begin with. And another thing that has been obviously in the news a lot is that traffic stops actually can be harmful, not just to the driver or the folks in the car, but also to police officers. And one of the things I like about traffic cameras is that they take that potential bias and that stop out of the equation. So that was the sort of the genesis of this idea. I think it would be really great for municipalities to have this option, especially in times when enforcement is both dangerous and diminished. It gives us some ability to regulate some behaviors that are potentially very, very dangerous. For your information, according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, There were 179 communities in 18 states and the District of Columbia using speed cameras. And approximately 23 states use red light camera programs or pilot programs at this time. And Iowa allows red light and speed cameras if they're approved via local ordinance. So there's sort of a patchwork of ways of doing this around the country. I did want to flag for you that a few colleagues brought up to me that speed cameras can be, I was told, racist and biased. And when I thought about this, it just seemed weird that a technology that seems fairly, colorblind, for lack of another word, that is just looking at a license plate could possibly have that kind of inherent bias. And when I did some research, what it looked like to me was that it's more how you use the cameras, where you place the cameras, where you get into trouble. So if you're putting cameras in a part of a city that is predominantly people of the global majority, of course, you could potentially have more violations. So you have to be very mindful of how you deploy the technology. But that is what I found when I did a little bit of research. So if that's something that you hear, just be aware that it's more about the deployment versus the actual technology.
And does your bill, it's not just state municipalities would have the ability to do it, right?
Right, correct. Yeah, and you will see that there's obviously a strong push to have cameras around the work zones. And this has that, it's in here, but it adds another layer in terms of allowing municipalities to use them as well.
For speeding and red lights.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there used to be a lot of departments had these, had plate readers and now I don't know of any department that has them. Maybe it's Anthea, maybe it's a question for you as well. What happened? They used to be everywhere.
For the record, Anthony Dexter Cooper, Office of Legislative Counsel. So in Title 23, it's section 1607 and 1608, you'll see that Senator Gulick's bill inserts this language in that same part of Title 23. Those statutes have a 2-year sunset on them, and it's been sort of extended multiple times. Going back to when the statutes were enacted, it was post there being a lot of federal grant money to get the ALPRs into usage by law enforcement agencies. So I think it's probably a combination of there not being money for them now, there being this fear that the regulation of them is going to go away. So why would we sort of invest in the technology? For a while, there was only, I think, the Essex County Sheriff's Department that was using them, and the DMV was using them in read-only mode. So they weren't recording any data, but they were just using it to look for Amber Alerts. I believe the DMV might still be using them in read-only mode. One of the things that this bill does, and there is not a companion bill in the House, but there is a bill that has a lot of the same language, but would be mostly geared towards work zones and only allowing the cameras to be used in 2 other locations, and it's a pilot program. Both of them address the ALPR piece by either extending the sort of eliminating the sunset, so allowing the statutes to stay in place indefinitely, or in the case of the bill in the House, it would allow it to sunset, I think it's in 2027, and then having a prohibition on using them. Because if those statutes go away and people started to get ALPRs again in usage, it would be unregulated technology. So it wouldn't require the reporting. There's a report that comes back to the General Assembly if they are being used. So I think it's a combination of these 2-year sunsets, the technology probably getting old and needing to be replaced, and there not being federal money for it to be replaced. But DPS would probably be able to give you an actual answer as opposed to my speculative answer.
My recollection is when we had discussion around this in the past, the privacy issue was the big issue, and actually that came out of judiciary, and that was the reason for the report, which, as I said, I remember Essex County was the only plus DMV. So that was the other concern was privacy. And then of course, it's a matter of who's actually operating the vehicle, because the owner and the operator could be different, but
There are some provisions in here.
so that was, but it was the storage and the privacy issue that became the overriding concern relative to the license plate readers.
So if you are looking for similarities between the Senate version of the ATLE bill and the House version, places where they align sort of perfectly are in terms of how long the plate images and the data are stored for, the fact that it is not to be taking pictures of who is driving the vehicle, just the front license plate. And because it is just taking the front license plate, it's a monetary only penalty, and it is not something that would have points on people's licenses. And I think that is sort of a trend, both in terms of the difficulty of proving who was driving the vehicle, having it be more like automatic tolling. You don't know who was driving the vehicle, you just know that it went through the easy pass lane without having easy pass, but also concerns around privacy and the preservation of data.
And so we've got a cross-committee jurisdiction issue. So
Definitely.
that's what I'm just bringing.
And the final,
I was just gonna say, Senator Conor Haseem is also a sponsor, so he's prepared to kind of walk
Yeah,
through that.
sure.
and on the House side, it also has sponsorship from both the chair of House Transportation and the chair of House Judiciary. It would surprise me if this bill was not taken up in one of the bodies this year, whether it's by your committee or another committee of jurisdiction.
Okay, yes.
I would suggest, I mentioned this earlier, if we are going to go down the privacy rabbit hole, I really do think we should have someone come in and speak to us about what our smartphones are doing.
They know
with
everything.
I mean, I'm serious. I can see where privacy could have been an issue a few decades back or whatever, but I think now the vast majority of us have smartphones, and it would be really fascinating to learn how we are being surveilled on our phones. I would just throw that out there as something that could be really interesting for us all to learn.
Yeah. Senator Shouldn't could have more conversations with Google about our transportation system. That'd be great.
And over the intervening time, people's views and what has been put in may change the discussion. So I'm just saying we've considered similar legislation in the past, and I certainly understand the safety issue, and anybody who lives in a neighborhood knows.
And I did ask somebody from
Traffic
public
speed.
safety to come in and just give us numbers and data on stops, just to see like what is the trend, because what I hear from people is that there are less stops. So see if that's accurate. And partly because of the lack of officers, and also,
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there's, another question.
Well, and I think the technology is,
Hey, there's the chair.
there he is.
Yeah,
We made it.
yeah, Senator Mazza, right there on the screen.
But I think the technology is something that is, of course, you watch, there's every time you turn the TV on, there's a crime show on there. But some of the things that they're solving with the cameras all throughout the cities and what
Well,
they've
you're
done.
surveilled everywhere you go.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So you kind of wonder how they've gotten around all those issues, because some of the cities probably are as much progressive as what the state of Vermont is in some areas, and so you wonder how they get around that privacy issue as well. When it comes to public safety, sometimes you have to wonder, who's protecting who.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So without going into a rabbit hole of case law around privacy,
Yeah, that would be
the
good.
expectation of being in the public, you are in the public. There is a difference between what you do when there might be a camera yielding like a criminal violation against you. Like, we don't have this expectation that if there are cameras on the streets in Burlington and they see you drop a piece of trash, that you're gonna get a ticket for littering. It's a different usage of a camera. This would be something that is affirmatively saying, if your vehicle with a combination of radar and camera technology goes through a red light, it takes a picture, then that can be something that like leads to a ticket. So I would say that while there is case law talking about an expectation of privacy and the usage of cameras in the world when we're out in public is a little bit different than the usage of that affirmatively yielding a violation. And that's what this bill does. It's not sort of saying there can be cameras everywhere. It's saying these cameras can be used in these instances if there is sort of the verification for them and it's used in this particular way, and a certified law enforcement officer who knows how to use the technology is the one that is reviewing the images and sending it. So I think the conversations are very much related, but not like a perfect overlap.
Thank you. Well, we have a co-sponsor of the bill on the committee. I'm interested in it, and so I hope we can take some more testimony on this bill.
Great, thank you so
See what we
much.
can find out about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good read, it's a compelling read. And there are a lot of provisions that call for signage and so on.
I want speed bumps. That's what I would
Yeah.
like, speed bumps.
Yeah.
The camera.
It would knock the rust right off your cars.
That's true.
Build a house for doing.
Oh my gosh,
Plow trucks don't like them.
Uh-oh.
huh,
I thought
don't-
the modern
trucks.
I thought modern plow trucks had the ability to
oh, plow trucks.
load over there.
Oh,
We
you
have a
have,
lot
the-
of roads in
actually,
Burlington.
you have
Speed bumps.
on back roads, you can do them temporarily. There
Right.
are some that you can install, so you can remove them. I would put one in front of my house if I could.
Yeah, across Route 2 or across the
No, they could be, they're within view of a stop sign and they must be going 50 miles an hour.
Oof.
Off your side road, off that side.
On my street,
Yeah,
yeah. On my- Huh?
That dirt
It's not a dirt road, it's paved. Was dirt when I first bought the house. So yes, speed is a real problem, both in terms of safety and not only neighborhoods, but even on our interstate systems.
I'll just add one thing in my district and very
Are
close to
you a
yours.
sponsor as well?
I am, but on East Avenue, right in front of the hospital, just 3 months ago, a UVM student got hit by a car that was just turning right on red without stopping appropriately. And those lights, the Waze devices, they detect them, and people drive differently when their phones are saying there is a traffic camera there. I see them in New York City, and just people are more conscientious. So I really think the public safety aspect is worth taking this up further. Get people to drive better around those intersections without having to burden our police force, our strained police force already. So great bill.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you for
And I
coming
will
in.
see you soon.
If you see our center runner out there, we send her in.
Oh, I will do,
Are we on
yes.
this car seats and sunscreen now?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Oh, that's nice.
And Thea didn't write this one, or did you?
I didn't write the sunscreen language, I did the car seat language, but this is something that was actually, I think the Vermont Department of Health has been instrumental.
Okay.
And this is a bill that does have a perfect companion bill in the House.
Did it go to House Transportation? Because I talked to
No, I think it went
there's some
to,
question about this bill going to health and welfare.
Title 16 comes before Title 23, so sunblock is before car seats. So my guess is that it went to House Human Services, but I can check.
Senator Mazza, how are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. Good job. There you go.
Good to hear. Do you want to share?
No, you no, continue on. Sure, it's great.
Okay. Well, and then we're gonna have Renner and Hardy come in. You see her out there.
The House one went to House Human Services.
And we're not gonna take up the sunscreen.
Well, we could be, the seatbelt,
Child seat.
child seat went to,
It's one bill.
There's one
I
bill.
know it is, but you said in the House,
In the House, the bill went to House Human Services, and it's identical.
it's identical, okay.
Is it unusual to have a bill with two?
And what we need to do, please ask to be relieved of the bill.
Oh, we could.
and let it go to health and welfare.
Probably do that.
The chair of Health and Welfare is also a sponsor of the bill,
Yeah.
so would not be a surprise to her to see it.
Yeah, my understanding from my reading was that they thought it was gonna go to health and welfare. Bloomer.
What's the student application of sunscreen. How do you do that? What's that?
Yeah, the sunscreen part, we're not gonna talk about.
Okay, all right. I was wondering what that was.
I know, I read it and I was like, this is the weirdest transportation bill I've ever read.
But we could solve that by asking to be relieved of the bill and have it go to health and welfare.
Good.
Yeah.
Unless we wanna talk about children's car seats.
We have talked about that in the past.
So I thought when Senator Renner comes in, we could ask her really quickly about that, but Senator Hardy is here. So if we wanted to go ahead and pick up her bill really quickly, because it's a pretty quick issue.
Sure.
We were gonna have Tucker here though, if we needed any questions.
Tucker is across the hall. I just left from that room.
So
And
do we have a S260? Did you bring that down, Russ?
Was that the,
State-owned impervious surface.
no, I did not bring that one down. I brought down a plate, veterans plate bill.
264.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That got weeks, so.
S260 went to Senate institutions.
Well, Senator Hardy, we probably don't need Tucker. You can just give us the quick run through
Okay.
of this bill, S-154,
yes,
why you introduced it
and what it does.
and what it does.
I will try not to get in over my head on this one. Good
We'll
morning.
go right ahead.
I'll just sort of make stuff up, but good morning, Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District. This bill, S-154, is a bill about the Vermont State Plane Coordinate System. I think it got referred to your committee because it has the word plane in it, but it actually means the other type of plane, not the plane that flies, but the plane, the flat plane, a measurement plane, because this bill is actually about surveying. And it was
But it's still PLANE,
It is spelled that way? Yeah.
Well,
yes,
as opposed to a plane, which
Right.
is,
not a plane like not
Right.
a plane like
Right,
a
that would be- yeah.
field, but a plane like a plane that you measure coordinates on, with an, X and Y coordinates on the plane. So again, I'm gonna get in over my head, so I'm gonna not talk about it too much, but this bill was requested by our Vermont State geographer, who is John Adams, and he works in the Agency of Administration, I believe. No, Agency of Digital Services. He's in the Vermont Center for Geographic Information. I sent Senator Perchlik his contact information and the original email he sent me. Would update the Vermont coordinate system in our statutes. So the longitude and latitude of Vermont, which is in our statutes and chapter 1 of our statutes. Oh, Tucker's the one that drafted it. Sorry, I was looking at. Yes, it is chapter 1. And the changes to the coordinates of everywhere change about every 50 years when they do an international remeasuring of the Earth's surface. And as you know, things shift a little bit. The tectonic plates, again, I'm getting in over my head, so apologies to anyone who actually knows what they're talking about and I'm describing this incorrectly, but things shift and things need to be remeasured. We know after 50 years, we know things shift. I believe it's every 50 years. I think it was last changed in the 70s. There are new datums being adopted by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. So you might want to have them in to talk to you about what they're doing. And our geographer, Mr. Adams, is responsible for the Vermont coordinates system. And he said that the people who are most impacted, the stakeholders, are surveyors. So people who survey land. I mean, there are people at the Agency of Transportation who do surveying, but it's beyond that. It's not just Agency of Transportation, it's land surveyors who are looking at properties and all that stuff. So you might want to, there might be a Vermont Association of Surveyors or something, but definitely have John in. He can explain it all to you. It's very technical, the draft, so I'm not going to pretend to understand it all.
And they've
but
already
it's-
created these things, we just need to put them into statute.
Yeah, it's just updating them. There's a National Geodetic Survey, which happens periodically, and that's what this is it's updating the results of that survey.
So Secretary,
Yeah,
we would started out with a plane as a plane, and, are we the right committee?
Right,
Well-
this is another
Oh,
opportunity.
yeah, I mean, it does,
I don't even know who has jurisdiction over,
Well, it could be government ops.
that's what I was
probably
thinking.
GovOps, because it is a sort of government operations-ish
I
thing.
think we should ask to be released and give it back to the,
I'm happy to have you all do it, if you have the time and are willing to
well, you
take
have
it
so
on.
many bills.
I have a lot of bills to tackle, so I don't think this is controversial. I don't think anybody's gonna say, no, I don't want you to change these things. I would encourage you to talk to John though, but if you want to refer it back to my committee, I will take it back, but if you have time, I would be happy to have you all do it.
And so why would we even need a bill on this? So I'm probably gonna get a lesson on statute and all of that. I feel it coming. But why do we even need a bill? Why can't the people, Mr. Adams, just do this?
That's a good question. I guess I would defer to Tucker. It has been in our statutes, I think, since the 1870s. And I think it's in state law everywhere. Like every state has their coordinates in their statutes so that it's clear where states are in relationship to
Disagreement
other.
about the line.
Exactly. I mean, I think you can imagine we've had disagreements between states in the past. And maybe this is an opportunity to make sure that states understand where their boundaries are. That's a great question to ask John and also Tucker, who drafted the bill. But it has, I mean,
I'm sure there's
one
a
of the
reason.
one of the
Yeah,
reasons
yeah.
that you need to do the bill is because it's already in statute and it's wrong now because it needs to be updated. So, this bill would just update what's already in statute.
Is there, a cycle of updating, do you know, like every decade or
Yeah, I think it's every 50 years.
50?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we won't need to worry about it.
So yeah, I mean, that's why nobody
Didn't
remembers
still
it,
be
but
next year.
in looking at when these statutes were last updated, I believe it was in the 70s, but again, I would defer to Tucker on that.
It raises the question, I don't know whether other states have done it, rather than having it specified in statute, just authority to update them based on, the whatever survey entity, geodetic.
Last Tucker.
The geodetic
So
survey.
maybe we can think about that so that it's just an automatic recalibration of the coordinates in the next 50 years.
Yeah, I
They could send
mean,
us a report.
oh, it looks like actually the last time it was done is 1983.
83.
Yeah, because and before that it was 1927. So maybe it's not as regular.
Senator Shindon has a question.
I was just gonna say, I'm not against taking this on, keeping it here. I just would really want to be able to answer that question with further testimony about what problem we're trying to solve, which is.
Yeah.
So if it's that we're just out of step and the statute's wrong, that would be helpful to have an expert tell us that.
It's
Okay.
not wrong, it's out of date.
Well,
Or if it even needs action from us.
right.
Oh, I think it does, if we're specific and we really want to get ourselves aligned.
And if it's already in statute.
Yeah,
There may also be a federal requirement, I don't know, that we do this, I'm not
So
sure.
who-
Tucker would know.
we should,
John Adams,
John
state
Adams?
John
geologist
Adams,
You
yeah,
know
or
him?
geographer.
geographer. He, for,
Yeah.
GIS, we moved that around, where is it now?
It's in many places, but the John Adams staff group, which they are now located, are they now with?
they're in ADS, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in
They
ADS.
would be the ones.
And that's another reason why it's really a GovOps bill, because we have ADS, but like I said, happy to have you guys do it as long as you
We'll
have
have
the time.
Tucker in, we'll have John in, and we could probably do it quicker.
I think you guys can do it quicker. And Tucker can answer the question and John about what
We're trying to solve.
problem you're trying to solve and why you need to solve it. Or can you solve it in a different way? I don't know.
What other planes?
Yeah, but I thought it was funny when it came
Yeah.
here because it has the word plane, but
They're
different
playing in
plane.
Spain.
Right. We can all recite poetry.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about the other bill too, or just this one?
Did we have you on for your other bill?
I think you did.
Oh, yeah, Act 210. Yeah, is that okay? Better work? Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yes, so
S 210.
S 210 is a transportation related bill, so it made sense that it came here. And it has 3 distinct issues in it. And I sent both Senator Perchlik and Senator Chittenden some more detailed information about it. But the 3 issues that it addresses are driver education. And I just want to take a note with Anthea sitting here about the proper, grammar for the term driver education. It's driver education, not driver's education. And the driver education people corrected Anthea and me about this because it's like language education or math education. It's not possessive. It's about the education of driving.
You are just a fount of information.
Yes, I thought it was fascinating.
Arcane.
And we even could play you a song by the Indigo Girls that has it correct if you'd like to hear it. Or I could send you the link to it. So anyway, currently driver education is only required for new drivers under age 18. But recent trends accelerated by the pandemic has shown that a lot of teens are waiting until after age 18 to get their driver's license, and they're skipping driver education.
Go ahead.
No, he was.
And simultaneously, the data is showing that while previously 16 to 18-year-olds were the largest cohort of drivers that were involved with crashes, now it's actually moving up to 18 to 24-year-olds. And a lot of those people have not taken driver education. So this change would require driver education for all new drivers over the age of 18. It would not require it for people who are moving from another state who already have a license in another state, but it would be for new drivers here in who haven't already gotten a driver's license somewhere else. And then it has provisions about creating curriculum and incentives for people to become driver education instructors, because I know that there is a shortage of this. This provision was brought to me by the Vermont Driver and Traffic Safety Association, which is the driver education association. So I highly recommend you have them in to talk to you about it. And one person that I definitely recommend is George Rooney, who's the Middlebury High School driver education teacher. I can recommend him as an excellent driver ed teacher. He taught one of my kids to drive, and he's really great. And he's a total car fanatic and knows a lot about driver ed and cars. So he would be great to have in, as well as Barbara Brody, who is the executive director of the Vermont Driver and Traffic.
Right.
Yeah,
Because she had an issue a lot about the training of the trainers last year.
Yeah, and so there's some language in this bill about the training of the trainers and the curriculum that would be developed with, I think it's CCV or Vermont State College System.
Castle's in charge of that.
Yeah, so definitely having those 2 in to talk about it, and they also have some data about the trends of people waiting and not taking driver ed, and also the sort of crash data. So it's really it's a road safety issue. It's a driver safety issue. So that's one of that's the first provision in the bill, and Anthea can take you through the details. The second provision is about crash test dummies.
Not the van.
not the band. And I think they're still called crash test dummies, even though it seems like kind of a derogatory term, but I think they are still called that. It turns out that a lot of vehicle manufacturers only use crash test dummies that have male bodies. And when they're standing in for female bodies, they just use male bodies that are shrunk down to what they think are female body average sizes. This creates a safety hazard for female drivers and female passengers because there's not there's not always crash tests using dummies that have female bodies. And in particular, this is extremely problematic for pregnant bodies. There's not often crash test dummies that are used. Some vehicle manufacturers do use them, so it's not everybody. I want to make clear, you can certainly find manufacturers that use diverse crash test dummies, but not all of them do. And so this bill, that's regulated by the National Transportation Safety Board, I believe. So it's a federal regulation. So this bill we can't impact that, but it would say that people who sell cars here would have to reveal or, post or notify if they're using crash test dummies appropriately, like diverse body types. So that's, one of the reasons I included this in the bill is because I often teach about gender and public policy and at Middlebury College. And I use this as an example about how gender shows up in public policy in surprising ways, things that we don't always think about. It's not always about, healthcare and pay. Sometimes it's about transportation safety. And so I often use this. There's been some great articles about this recently, and I think I sent them to Senator Chittenden and Perchlik, and I can send them to the whole committee if you'd like. And Anthea has done a bunch of research on this too. So I often use as an example as how gender matters in areas that you wouldn't think it would come up. So I thought, well, I'm going to do a transportation safety bill. I might as well put this in there. And I think it would, bring light to this issue and make it safer for female non-male drivers in Vermont. So then that's the second one. And then the third one is about pedestrian safety and large vehicles. As you all probably know, because you're the transportation committee, over the last 10 to 20 years, vehicles in the United States have gotten significantly larger and heavier. And that makes them actually more deadly for other drivers who may be in smaller vehicles, also for pedestrians and bicyclists and other people who are not in a large vehicle. And we're seeing increased rates of pedestrian injuries and deaths across the country and also here in Vermont. So this bill would include provisions, or does include provisions about the safety of pedestrians, and it links it to the Complete Streets, I think it's called, and the requirement that the Agency of Transportation use Complete Streets planning and for vulnerable drivers, I think is the term, which is all encompassing of, pedestrians and people on bicycles and things like that. So this is something, I know that you all talk about Complete Streets a lot, and I think it's something that we really need to lean into a lot more, given the safety trends that we're seeing and the size of vehicles, municipal planning, the wanting to make our downtowns more walker and pedestrian friendly. This is something the AARP has been advocating for a number of years because it particularly impacts older Vermonters. So I would definitely have them in. So those are the three provisions in the bill, and happy to send you more information.
One of the questions that I've been looking forward to talking about is the electric bicycles. We've got to address those sooner or later because we have more of them now than ever, and we have to distinguish what their right of way is or what rights they have to the highway. because they are very popular and we don't want to discourage them. But on the other hand, we have nothing that says what their rights are, whether they go in traffic lane, whether they go in a pedestrian lane, or where they go. But it's something we have to also consider, I think, as a committee, talk about that.
Yeah, I would agree. That could be part of this bill too, if you want to add it to it, about e-bikes.
Just as a topic of conversation, I think I brought up last year, but we certainly want to encourage the electric bikes, but there are more of them, but right now they don't know where they should belong. Do they belong with traffic or not with traffic, or because some of these electric bikes are going 30 miles an hour, I guess. So
Yeah.
it's a big
Yeah.
difference.
Thank you, Senator. It's good to see you. You look good.
Yeah, thank you. Feeling better. Be there tomorrow. Yep.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, and complete streets will definitely be an issue that we're
Yeah,
talking about in here.
yeah.
Okay, is there any questions for Senator Hardy on S210? Well,
We probably ought to hear from your highway safety folks as well, because they do a lot of data analysis
Yeah.
in fact, we are hearing from them.
later in the week.
Yeah.
Around this bill or?
No, just in general.
Just in general.
Excellent. Well, thank you all
Thank you.
for taking up these bills, and happy to provide more information. Should I send John anybody's contact information to
Yeah.
Megan, or
Yeah.
is that okay?
I have it too, but if you happen to think of it, send
Okay.
John's contact information.
I can just forward her the email I sent to you
Yeah.
with information. Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Senator Renner.
For the record, Green Runner, Senator from Chittenden North. Maybe you've read a news report like this. An entire family walks away from a head-on collision except their infant dies or gets seriously injured. These tiny bodies can't always absorb that impact if not properly strapped in. In 2018, the American Association of Pediatrics put out a child passenger safety statement, changing and updating the age and weights at which children should be kept in a rear-facing seat in the back seat of a car. Several states updated their regulations, but Vermont on the book still says 1 year and 20 pounds. It can be forward-facing in a booster seat, and that is not safe. It's important for these small Vermont residents that we take this seriously and update our regulations, I believe. And with the help of Jenny Lyons, we've done just that in this proposed bill. We could increase the age at which you can legally ride in a forward-facing seat, catching Vermont up to the states who have already updated their statutes.
And what was the national standard? Did you mention that?
I did not. It's more like 3 or 4 years, depending on, and manufacturers actually have recommended this for a long time, but the states just haven't kept up.
Okay,
And
so
there
it's
is
keeping
a
up
long,
with the manufacturer's recommendation.
yes, as well as the pediatrician's recommendations. And we believe that keeping children restrained in rear seats and rear-facing car seats longer, as well as several other regulations that you'll see in the bill for older children, again, keeping them in the back seat longer, keeping them in booster seats longer, will prevent injuries and save lives. So, thank you for your consideration, and there are people from the health department and someone from the highway safety department, as well as someone from UVM who works in pediatrics who would love to testify and take this up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you'll forgive us not asking you about the first part of the bill about sunscreen.
Oh, well, I thought that was.
But on a serious note, we wondered if you knew if Health and Welfare wanted to take it up, because we could relieve, ask to be relieved of the bill and sent over there.
I think they would welcome that.
And you would welcome that as well?
I would welcome that as well. I just didn't know if you wanted to sort of take a first peek at it, since Ginny's not only a co-author of the bill, but also the chair there.
Is it you and Jenny or the other co-author? Yeah.
We kept it simple.
Yeah. And do we know, did you write this, Cynthia?
I wrote the car seat piece in consultation with the Department of Health, and then Katie McGlynn did the sunscreen piece, also in consultation with the Department of Health.
Okay. And do we know why we haven't updated? I mean, is it considered an update, or is it
Oh.
different because it's manufacturers, not like a federal
So I'm gonna do like a very short answer, and I think the Department of Health will probably have more background information, but, so that American Academy of Pediatrics report came out in 2018, and it made, I think it was 5 recommendations, and most of them were linked to you should be rear facing as long as the vehicle manufacturer says that you should be rear facing. So it would be sort of specific to the car seat manufacturer, what they have designed it to and tested it for. There is not, my understanding is, a federal requirement for how long you stay rear facing. That's in the state level. There are lots of federal requirements, and you'll see CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, cited many times in Senator Renner and Senator Lyons' bills, about like the definitions for a 5-point safety harness, so there's uniformity there, and then the testing piece. And if you're asking why might a state not choose to update to things like as long as the vehicle manufacturer says you should be rear facing, law enforcement is not necessarily going to be in a position to like rustle around the back of the car seat and pull out the manufacturer's like specifications and look at it, which is why you'll see there are caps in there that are linked to rear facing as long as the manufacturer says you should be rear facing, but if you hit X weight or X age, then you can be forward facing. And that is consistent with what other states are doing there.
And does this deal with the puffy coat situation?
Does not deal with the puffy coat situation. I had a conversation with my kid about the puffy coat situation this morning when he came out with like 8 coats. But that would be something that is potentially part of, you'll see there's an outreach requirement that requires the Vermont Department of Health to update the, is it bseatsmart.org?
Right, exactly, yeah.
So it's not VermontSeatSmart.org, like Vermont has snagged the bseatsmart.org domain and has very comprehensive information there, and it also requires the Department of Health to provide updated materials that could be distributed by like pediatricians or UVM. And I'm sure if they wanted to, it would be a great opportunity to talk about the puppy coat situation there. And then the final thing I will just mention is you have a bill on your wall from last session. Senator White's bill did address a small piece of this. It talked about not having the car seats be in the front seat unless the front airbag had been disabled, and where practicable, they should be in the rear seat. So this is something that has come up in another bill. This bill from Senator Renner and Senator Lyons is much more comprehensive in trying to match the recommendations from the 2018 report from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And these guys can tell you so much more.
So I see 2 topics here, and I'm just, assuming this goes through the Senate and when it gets over to the House, is it gonna have to go through 2 committees? Would it be more practical for us to pull the child safety thing into a miscellaneous bill and then just have health and welfare take on the other? Just wondering if that's.
There is a House bill, you said that was identical?
Yeah, there's a companion bill in the House, but I think what Senator Turner is alluding to is taking out sections 2 and 3 from this bill and maybe sticking it in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill. And then if the bill moves in the Senate, it could be just sunblock if the House takes it up. But you obviously don't know what's happening in the House. Maybe they're gonna move the whole thing.
But did you say it was in their
In the House, the companion bill has been referred to House Human Services.
It does not hurt to have it in 2 places, so Senator Renner, I fully support pulling that onto the DMV miscellaneous bill and taking testimony on that, and then letting the sunscreen work its way through other channels.
Yeah, that could be a good solution. Okay, is there any other questions about sunscreen or car seats for Senator Renner? That's it.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you
your
for coming
time.
in.
Welcome.
Tucker, we already did your other bill, but since you're here, we could ask you a quick question because I think we have a little time. If we want to, because we could still even take a break for our next witness. So we had a quick question about this coordinate system and why we need to do it. Like, what problem are we just trying to solve? Or you can come up to the seat or do it from over there.
All right, good morning. For the record, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. So the
Senator Hardy walked us through
the current measurement system that is being used for the existing coordinate system in Vermont has been deprecated by the National Geodetic Survey. And that doesn't mean that those systems are no longer usable. They will be usable until 2025 when the new system comes into place. And then they will no longer be usable. The measurement systems will no longer be based on the US survey foot. They will change to a different system of measurement. Let me see here, make sure that's the correct order.
I mean, the main question is, what would happen if we didn't do it? Like, why do we need this in statute? Or, you know, is it appropriate for statute, or is it something we could just give to an agency to update every 50 years or something?
That is an excellent question that I have actually posed to the Vermont Center for Geographic Information. And the response was twofold. First, that they didn't have a recommendation for what legislative body and an administrative agency would actually do this. There's no board, from what I understand, that would oversee this specific matter. And the second is that they wanted to have a place, the Vermont statutes, where both the new system and the existing system, or excuse me, legacy systems that preceded this, would be discoverable by surveyors and could be easily referenced. So maintain a statute so that people can find it in the future. Make sure that people understand when they're pulling, for example, an old title and map of a property, that if it's using one of the legacy systems, that they can first confirm the legal validity of those measurements, but then also have a place where it's codified what the measurement differences might be in the new systems.
Could you go back to your original testimony in terms of who does it and why, and then 2025? Could you, I didn't totally retain all that.
So similar
I didn't
to
retain
other,
much of it, I think, as I'm.
it's so difficult to retain this, yeah.
It's very exciting, yes, in terms of, its importance, and you said, and I would assume, for example, some surveying companies might be surveying in multiple states. So you'd want consistency, I'm sure, for, you know, whatever the protocols are, or the standards. But could you state, is it a national entity that does this update? I guess it's not a specified period of time based on when the statutes got changed in the past, but.
So the relationship is similar to probably what you work with a lot here, where there's a federal department or agency.
Like NIST, we're familiar with NIST.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
In this case, the department is the National Geodetic Survey that adopts the mapping standards. And that is done in conjunction with the Oceanographic Survey and a few other organizations. The National Spatial Reference System, as adopted by the National Geodetic Survey. So you have this federal nationwide system for mapping and measurements that is going to make a transition in 2025. And they are going to be adopting a specific coordinate system for mapping the state of Vermont. And these state measurement systems have to be in compliance by that time.
No, I'm convinced we should do it.
Which,
Is that a motion?
Well, we probably ought to have John Adams in. John Adams, is it?
Yeah, but not the.
Not the John.
He's aged well.
Yeah, you know, to take testimony, but it sounds like it's really an update and bringing ourselves into conformity and something that we need to do.
And it could be thrown into the miscellaneous DMV bill, although it has nothing to do with DMV.
Oh, we can move it separately.
Also on the T-bill.
it has to do with everything that is getting mapped, and there's an official record. They have to have specific reference points for where, down to a decimal point, that location is on the Earth's surface. And as far as, historical reasons why, if you ever look at the shape of Vermont towns and wonder why some of them are square, some of them are squiggly, or have weird jutting angles on them, it's because when the original surveys were done with the state of Vermont, they had surveyors dragging literal chains along all the borders of the municipality and there was sag in the line at some points of some angles of the towns were smaller than others. And then they left property unclaimed. It was discovered later there were 60 unorganized territories in Vermont at one point that got folded into other towns. So Vermont is always discovering that there's more land than we had previously thought, and perhaps updating the mapping standards will reveal there's even more pockets of undiscovered land.
There's an interesting book called How the States Got Their Shape. I'll just read it if you are interested. It's quite interesting. You can apply their jigs and jets.
Well, I know how I got my shape.
So.
And it doesn't have to do with the changes of the magnetic field, but actually the changes of the Earth itself.
That might be an excellent question. If you can get John
Yeah, we'll
Adams
get
in
John
here
Adams.
to ask about the details. There is a webpage that I can send to you all that describes in plain terms the transition and the background here and what is going to happen in presumably 2025 when these new standards are issued for the state of Vermont.
Okay, well, great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We could move this out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can't imagine it being controversial. The big controversy would be with what plane are we talking
Couldn't see
about?
what
How are we
idea.
spelling the word?
Like Cabot Point.
Airplanes. Okay, well, we don't have our next testimony on the Twin State Energy Link Highway usage till 11:15, so we can take a break. But real quickly, any comments on these bills? It seems like this bill,
Yes,
people are okay
I
with.
got something for Senator Kitchell as being a teacher in the group.
What?
Are you sure it's PLANE and not PLAIN? It is, it's PLANE.
Like plane.
PLANE, yes,
Yeah,
plane,
yeah,
yeah, like the plane of a
Yeah.
line,
We
yeah.
just think of floodplain
Oh, I
and
know.
then plane
Yeah.
and being the same,
I
then it's
know,
referencing
plane, when is a
land.
plane a plane?
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's why I would have flunked that 58 times.
Likewise.
Oh.
Okay, so it seemed like people like the idea of talking about the speed cameras, take a testimony on that. And then the car safety will ask, I'll talk to Chair Lyons just about having her committee do that. Or do we want to split it up?
I don't mind doing that.
The car seat?
I don't mind doing the car seat. I mean, it's really kind of in our committee and
We could still relieve.
really, no need for sunscreen, right?
Yeah, we could relieve,
Right.
Sorry, looking for Thomas. I'll catch you later.
we can, and I'll just tell her, we can relieve ourselves of the bill so she can take up the sunscreen part. And then they can, if we're moving it in DMV, they can take out the child car seat part out of.
Yeah, then we could do the car seat and miscellaneous, right?
You can.
Would that make sense, or would it be a different bill?
You can argue it either way, I mean, because it's Department of Health, but it's sort of the same, concept of a seatbelt uses. In other words, what are those safety requirements that go with the operation of a motor vehicle, which would, to me, suggest that we're the committee of jurisdiction.
Right, because if you start talking about automobile manufacturers and all of that, that's,
So I think,
What's this do to child seats? What's it do?
It just it updates the Vermont standards to be in line with what the manufacturers are saying as far as
Okay.
age and
It
weight.
doesn't change the positions or nothing, the positions stay the same, everything.
Stays the same, except it just says when the seat should be forward facing and when it should be reverse facing.
Oh. Okay,
some other states apparently have gotten ahead of us on that, and we kind of stayed where it was some years ago, and so I got it that we were probably behind some other states as far as what they had proposed.
so I think the answer is to talk to Senator Lyons and see if sunscreen could fit in
Yeah.
another health-related bill. And with the understanding that what we would want to do on seatbelts to bring that up to, those standards current, could go and travel in the DMV bill, which is miscellaneous. Where is that?
We're gonna have to hear it, I think, on Friday
On Friday.
on the calendar. That's what they're gonna be.
To me, that seems to be the most appropriate vehicle to deal with that update.
We haven't seen the DMV bill yet. Have you seen it? So maybe they're just gonna wait for the big reveal when they come in, but if they have it,
It's not too big, you said, or is it?
I think it's about 9 or 10 pages.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we'll do with 187 ordinances we talked about. 210 is the other bill that Hardy walked us through about driver's ed, driver ed, the crash test dummies and pedestrian safety. We might be dealing with the pedestrian safety and other bills. I guess we can see how things are going if we're going to take up any of those issues in other bills.
Well, when it gets into the complete streets, which gets into standards, but, we probably need more, and we're touching on the ARP she mentioned.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in coming in.
Yeah, and I can't remember if we actually fixed that issue that Brody brought to us before about the training of the trainers, which I thought was a legitimate problem.
And the cost, that was the other thing, all right?
Yeah, and everybody was going to some community college in New Hampshire to get their training. Okay. And then I assume, well, we can talk about the license plate. We have 2 license plate bills, both dealing with veterans license plates that we can talk about. So we'll take a break unless there's any other questions to 11:15. Is that okay with you, Senator Mazza?
Yeah, fine, good.